So today we're going to look at a topic called approximations. And approximations, basically we are dealing with numbers or figures which are close to one another. So I can decide to approximate one number to another, but of course the number to which I'm approximating has to be close to this other number which I've approximated. So like I've said, we're going to, the topic for today is approximations. And when we are dealing with approximations, there are different cases that involve approximations. So we have approximating maybe to whole numbers. We have what we call approximating to a given number of decimal points. Then we also have what we call approximation to significant figures or significant digits. So we're going to look at all those in details, and we're going to learn more about what a decimal place is, what a decimal point is, what a significant figure or a number is. So that is what we're going to look at basically in this topic of approximations. For example, I can want to know what is the distance from Barara to Nakivale camp. Now, the exact distance could be maybe 36.8561. That may be the exact and accurate distance, 36.8561. But I may not get that exact value. So what I do is I approximate maybe to the nearest kilometers, or maybe to the nearest whole numbers. So that is what we call approximation. Or I can have a bunch of matoke whose mass I may not know exactly what it is. So what I do is I approximate that the mass of that bunch of matoke to the nearest kilograms. A whole number is a number which may not have a decimal point. That's when we're considering what we're looking at today. So if I'm going to approximate maybe to a whole number, I'm approximating one number to another number. Both of them are whole numbers. So that is what we're going to start with. And so I've said we're going to look at approximate whole numbers. Approximating to whole numbers. So I can give a few examples which we shall use for us to understand clearer the idea which we are looking at. So my example number one could be round off the following to the nearest 100. So I can have my first one as, if these are my examples and I'm told to round off can mean approximate. So here basically I'm being told to approximate the following numbers to the nearest hundreds. Now in primary we looked at what we call place values. When you're starting from the right, as you start from the right going to the left, the last place value is what you call the ones, proceed to tens, then hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and so on and so forth. So when I look at the very first number which I have in this case, Roman numeral 1, these are my solutions or the answers. So number 1, I have this number is 25,605. So when I write this number here, I have 25605. I first look for the number which is in the place value of hundreds, because remember the question requires us to round off to the nearest hundreds. So I'm going to look for the number which is in that place value of hundreds. The very first number at the last we say is in the place value of ones. The next one, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000. So when I'm looking for the one for hundreds, it is 6. This is the one which has a place value of hundreds. So when I'm going to round off to the nearest 100, number 1, I first locate the number which is in that particular place value. When I'm done with that, I look at the number which is next to that number which I've got. In other words, the number to the right of that number, or the number after that number which you've located. So if that number which you've located is from 0 up to 4. In other words, if that number is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If that number lies between any of those numbers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 0 to this number which I've already located, which is in the place value of hundreds. In other words, when that number is from 0 to 4, the number which was in the place value which you already located does not change. However, if the number is from 5 to 9, in other words, if the number is 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, I'm going to add 1 to that number which I already located. So, if the number is 5 and above, I add 1 to the number which I already located, whose place value I already located. So, the number I located in this case was 6, and 6 is the one which lies in the place value of hundreds. So, I look at the number which is after 6. And when you look at this case, the number after 6 is a 0. The number after the 6 is a 0. And we say that if the number after the 6 is 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, what I do is I add a 0 to the 6, or the 6 does not change. After I have done that, all the other numbers to the right of 6, I replace them with zeros. In other words, what I'm saying is this. I started by locating the number which is in the place value of hundreds. Then I look at the number which is next to it. The number in this case is 0. So since it is 0, I'm going to add a 0 to the 6. Of course, 0. So I'm going to have 2, 5, 6, 0, 5. And I'm going to add a 0 to this 6. And of course, I know when I add 0, the number does not change to remain the way it was. So after I have done that, all the other numbers to the right of 6, I'm going to replace them with 0. So if there was a 0, I will leave it as a 0. Where there is a 5, I'm going to replace it with a 0. If there is a 2, I replace it with a 0. If there is a 7, I replace it with a 0. In other words, all the numbers to the right of 6 shall be replaced by a 0. So meaning, in this case, when I replace all the numbers to the right of 6 with a 0, I'm going to have this 6, 0. I also replace 5 with a 0. So, that happens to be my final answer, 25,600. That is how we round off to the nearest hundreds. We can look at the second question. Maybe it will help us to understand deeper. We have 1,478. So we do like what we did here. Number 1, you locate the number which is in the place value of hundreds. So I'm going to start from the right, going towards the left. Of course, the last one here is ones, tens, and then hundreds. So meaning 4 is in the place value of hundreds. After I have located the 4, I look at the number which is next to 4, and that number is 7. And we say that when the number after this one is greater or equal to 5, what I do is I'm going to add a 1 to the 4 here. So I'm going to come down here and say 1, 4, 7, 8, and I'm going to add a 1 to the 7. Mind you, I do not add the 1 to the 8. I add the 1 to the number which is in the place value which were asked in the beginning. So I'm going to add this 1 to the 4, not to the 7. So I'm going to add 1 there. This one is not supposed to be there. So when I add 1 to 4, I end up with 5. 1, 5. Then, remember we said that after you've added 1 or 0, all the numbers to the right of the number whose place value is 0. Meaning that after I've added 1 to the 4 and I get 5, I'm going to replace the 7 with a 0. I'm also going to replace the 8 with a 0. So I'm going to say 1. Of course, 4 plus 1 gives us 5. I replace the 7 with a 0. I replace the 8 with a 0. So my final answer is 1,500.